The industrial dishwasher steam billowed through the cramped galley like fog rolling off the ocean, while the relentless clatter of metal plates and cutlery created a symphony of chaos that had become Lieutenant Sarah Chen's daily soundtrack aboard the USS Yorktown. For 3 months, she had scrubbed grease from skillets, peeled mountains of potatoes, and endured the sneers of sailors who whispered that she must have really messed up to land kitchen duty on one of the Navy's most prestigious destroyers. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. What none of them knew was that Sarah Chen wasn't just another officer who had fallen from grace. She was exactly where she needed to be, carrying out a mission so classified that even the ship's captain remained unaware of her true purpose. The assignment had begun 6 weeks earlier in a windowless conference room deep within the Pentagon, where Sarah sat across from Admiral Rebecca Morrison, a woman whose steel-gray eyes had seen 3 decades of naval operations, and whose reputation for uncovering security threats was legendary throughout the fleet. The meeting had been scheduled as a routine personnel review, but Sarah quickly realized this was anything but standard procedure when Admiral Morrison slid a manila folder across the polished mahogany table without opening it. "Lieutenant Chen," Admiral Morrison had said, her voice carrying the weight of authority that came from commanding respect in a male-dominated hierarchy, "your record shows exceptional performance in intelligence gathering and operational security. Your scores in psychological assessment and undercover operations place you in the top 2% of naval officers." Sarah had nodded, uncertain where this conversation was heading, when the Admiral's expression grew darker. "We have a problem aboard the USS Yorktown, and we need someone with your particular skills to investigate it from the inside." The folder contained photographs, personnel files, and incident reports that painted a troubling picture. Over the past 8 months, the Yorktown had experienced a series of security breaches that appeared random but followed a pattern visible only to trained intelligence analysts. Kitchen duty, universally despised throughout the Navy as the assignment given to sailors who had failed to meet standards, would provide the perfect cover for her investigation. Admiral Morrison had outlined the specific parameters of the mission with the precision of someone who had planned covert operations for decades. Sarah would report directly to the Admiral through encrypted communications sent during predetermined time windows when the ship's communications officer would be off duty. She would document suspicious behavior, unusual conversations, and any patterns that might indicate coordinated espionage activities. Most importantly, she would maintain her cover at all costs, even if it meant enduring the humiliation and disrespect that came with being perceived as a failed officer. "The crew must believe you belong exactly where you are," Admiral Morrison had emphasized, her tone leaving no room for misunderstanding. "If anyone suspects you're conducting surveillance, the entire operation becomes compromised, and we lose our only chance to identify the security threat. You'll be reporting to Chief Petty Officer Martinez in the galley, and as far as he's concerned, you're there because you screwed up and need to learn some discipline." The transformation from respected intelligence officer to disgraced kitchen worker had required more than just a change in assignment. Sarah had spent 2 weeks at a facility in Virginia learning the specific skills required for galley operations, from proper food handling procedures to the efficient operation of industrial cooking equipment. She had studied the personalities and backgrounds of the Yorktown's crew, memorizing faces, ranks, and service histories so she could blend seamlessly into the ship's social dynamics. More challenging than the technical preparation had been the psychological adjustment required to convince everyone around her that she was genuinely demoralized and resentful about her circumstances. Sarah had practiced expressions of frustration and resignation, learning to project the body language of someone whose career had been derailed by poor judgment. She had rehearsed conversations where she would deflect questions about her background while appearing defensive and embarrassed about her current situation. The first morning aboard the Yorktown had tested every aspect of her preparation as Sarah reported to the galley at 0500 hours, dressed in the plain work uniform that marked her as kitchen staff rather than a commissioned officer. Chief Petty Officer Martinez, a compact man with weathered hands and suspicious eyes, had looked her up and down with the expression of someone who had seen too many officers assigned to his kitchen as punishment detail. "So you're the lieutenant who thought she was too good to follow orders," Martinez had said, his voice carrying the particular blend of authority and contempt that senior enlisted personnel reserved for officers who had fallen from grace. Well, in my galley, rank doesn't mean anything except you get to scrub the grease traps and take out the garbage. Think you can handle that, or do you need me to explain how soap and water work? Sarah had forced herself to look appropriately chastened, nodding without making eye contact, while projecting the demeanor of someone who was struggling to accept their reduced circumstances. I understand, Chief. I'm here to do whatever work needs to be done. Martinez had studied her for a long moment, clearly trying to assess whether she would cause problems or adapt to the demanding physical labor that defined galley operations. The kitchen aboard the USS Yorktown operated with military precision, serving over 300 meals 3 times daily, while maintaining the strict sanitation standards required for a vessel that might spend months at sea without resupply. The galley staff consisted of 8 enlisted sailors under Martinez's supervision, each responsible for specific aspects of food preparation, cooking, and cleanup. Sarah's assignment placed her at the bottom of this hierarchy, responsible for the least desirable tasks that required the most physical effort and provided the least opportunity for advancement. Her first week had been a brutal introduction to the realities of naval kitchen operations. She had awakened each morning at 0430 hours to begin food preparation for breakfast service, spending her days in the sweltering heat generated by industrial ovens and steam tables, while handling massive quantities of food that required constant lifting, chopping, and stirring. The work was exhausting, leaving her muscles aching and her hands raw from constant exposure to cleaning chemicals and hot water. But the physical demands of the job paled in comparison to the social challenges of maintaining her cover while gathering intelligence about potential security threats. The galley's central location in the ship made it a natural gathering place where crew members would stop throughout the day to grab coffee, pick up snacks, or engage in informal conversations. Sarah found herself in the perfect position to observe interactions between different departments and note which sailors seemed particularly interested in information that fell outside their normal duties. During her second week, she began to notice patterns that aligned with the security concerns outlined in Admiral Morrison's briefing. Petty Officer Jackson from the Communications Department made frequent visits to the galley, far more than necessary for someone whose duties kept him busy in the radio room. He would linger during conversations with other crew members, asking casual questions about upcoming operations, and showing unusual interest in details about port schedules and cargo manifests. Even more suspicious was Seaman Rodriguez from the Navigation Department, who had developed a habit of volunteering for galley duty during off hours, claiming he enjoyed cooking as a hobby. While his help was appreciated by the overworked kitchen staff, Sarah noticed that Rodriguez paid careful attention to conversations between officers who would stop by for coffee, and often positioned himself within earshot when senior personnel discussed operational matters. The challenge lay in documenting these observations without arousing suspicion while maintaining the demanding schedule of kitchen operations. Sarah had developed a system of mental note-taking during her shifts, memorizing specific conversations and behavioral details that she would later transcribe during her limited off-duty hours. The encrypted communications equipment Admiral Morrison had provided was disguised as a standard electronic device that could pass casual inspection, but using it required careful timing to avoid detection by the ship's communications monitoring systems. Her third week aboard the Yorktown brought a development that confirmed her suspicions about potential espionage activities. During the evening meal service, she overheard a conversation between Rodriguez and Jackson that seemed innocuous on the surface, but contained subtle references to information that neither sailor should have possessed. Rodriguez mentioned details about an upcoming port visit that had not yet been announced to the general crew, while Jackson made comments about equipment specifications that were classified above his security clearance level. The conversation took place near the serving line where Sarah was refilling food trays, positioning her perfectly to hear their discussion while appearing focused on her duties. Rodriguez had lowered his voice when mentioning the port schedule, glancing around to ensure they weren't being overheard by senior personnel. Jackson's response included technical details about communications equipment that suggested he had access to information beyond his authorized scope. Sarah had continued working mechanically while straining to catch every word of their exchange, her training in surveillance techniques allowing her to appear completely absorbed in her tasks while actually conducting sophisticated intelligence gathering. The challenge was memorizing the exact wording of their conversation while maintaining the physical coordination required to serve meals efficiently and avoid drawing attention to herself. That evening, she had transmitted her first significant intelligence report to Admiral Morrison, using the encrypted device during a predetermined communication window when the ship's monitoring systems would be temporarily offline for routine maintenance. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The report detailed her observations about Rodriguez and Jackson, including their unusual access to classified information and their apparent coordination in gathering intelligence that fell outside their legitimate duties. Admiral Morrison's response had come 12 hours later through the same encrypted channel, confirming that Sarah's observations aligned with intelligence gathered through other sources and authorizing her to continue surveillance while maintaining her cover at all costs. The Admiral's message had also contained new information about similar security breaches aboard other vessels in the fleet, suggesting that the Yorktown situation might be part of a larger espionage network operating throughout the Navy. The revelation that she might be investigating a coordinated intelligence operation rather than isolated security lapses had added new urgency to Sarah's mission, while also increasing the personal risk she faced if her true identity was discovered. Espionage networks typically included sophisticated counter-surveillance capabilities, and would likely react violently if they detected an undercover investigator within their target environment. Her fourth week aboard the ship had brought new challenges as the crew began to accept her presence and include her in the informal social dynamics that developed among personnel working closely together. The kitchen staff had gradually warmed to her presence, particularly after she demonstrated competence in handling the demanding physical work and showed willingness to take on the most unpleasant tasks without complaint. Seaman Williams, one of the younger galley workers, had begun treating her almost like a mentor figure, seeking advice about military procedures and career advancement opportunities. His trust created opportunities for Sarah to ask casual questions about other crew members and their behavior patterns, but it also generated guilt about deceiving someone who genuinely respected her. Chief Martinez had also begun showing signs of grudging approval for her work ethic, occasionally allowing her to take on more responsible duties like managing inventory or supervising meal preparation during busy periods. While this recognition felt good personally, it also created the risk that improved treatment might undermine her cover story about being assigned to kitchen duty as punishment for disciplinary problems. The most significant development during her fourth week had been an incident that provided direct evidence of the espionage activities she had been sent to investigate. While cleaning equipment in the galley's storage area after the evening meal service, Sarah had discovered Rodriguez and Jackson conducting what appeared to be a clandestine meeting near the ship's communication cables that ran through the galley's utility spaces. The two sailors had been examining a section of cable housing with equipment that looked far more sophisticated than anything required for routine maintenance work. Rodriguez had been taking photographs of cable connections while Jackson monitored a device that appeared to be designed for intercepting electronic communications. Neither sailor had authorization to be in that area during off-duty hours, and their equipment suggested capabilities for sophisticated electronic surveillance. Sarah had remained hidden behind industrial refrigeration units while observing their activities, using techniques learned during intelligence training to document their actions without revealing her presence. The challenge had been maintaining her position for over 20 minutes while the two sailors completed their work, fighting against muscle cramps and the natural urge to shift positions that might create noise and compromise her surveillance. When Rodriguez and Jackson finally completed their activities and departed through separate routes, Sarah had waited an additional 30 minutes before examining the area they had been working in. She discovered subtle modifications to the cable housing that would allow for future access without leaving obvious evidence of tampering. The sophistication of their work suggested professional training in electronic surveillance techniques that went far beyond the skills typically possessed by Navy personnel at their rank levels. Her report of this incident to Admiral Morrison had generated an immediate response, authorizing expanded surveillance activities and providing additional resources for documenting the espionage network's operations. The Admiral's message had also contained warnings about increased personal risk and instructions for emergency extraction procedures if Sarah's cover was compromised. The fifth week aboard the Yorktown had brought a new complication when Lieutenant Commander Harrison from the ship's intelligence department began showing unusual interest in the galley operations. Harrison had started making frequent visits to observe kitchen procedures, claiming concern about food safety protocols, but asking questions that suggested interest in the staff's backgrounds and security clearances. Sarah had initially worried that Harrison might have detected something suspicious about her presence, but careful observation revealed that his attention was focused primarily on Rodriguez and Jackson. It appeared that the ship's official intelligence personnel had also begun to notice the unusual behavior patterns that Sarah had been documenting, creating the possibility that her covert investigation might interfere with conventional security measures. The situation required delicate navigation to avoid compromising either investigation, while ensuring that the espionage network didn't detect the increased scrutiny. Sarah had continued her surveillance activities while also monitoring Harrison's behavior to assess whether his investigation posed risks to her own mission objectives. During this period, she had also begun to identify additional crew members who might be involved in the espionage activities. Petty Officer Thompson from the engineering department had started showing up in areas where he had no legitimate business, often appearing shortly after Rodriguez or Jackson had been present. His behavior suggested coordination with the primary suspects, indicating that the espionage network might be larger than initially suspected. More concerning was the behavior of Chief Warrant Officer Davis from the Supply Department, who had begun asking detailed questions about galley staff schedules and duty assignments. Davis's inquiries seemed designed to identify patterns in personnel movements that could be exploited for clandestine activities, suggesting sophisticated planning capabilities within the espionage network. The complexity of the situation had grown beyond simple surveillance of individual suspects to encompass a coordinated intelligence operation involving multiple departments and potentially extending to personnel at various levels of the ship's hierarchy. Sarah's daily reports to Admiral Morrison had begun to paint a picture of systematic compromise that threatened the security of not just the Yorktown, but potentially the entire fleet. Her 6th week aboard the ship had culminated in an incident that nearly exposed her true identity, when Rodriguez approached her directly with questions about her background and reasons for being assigned to kitchen duty. The conversation had taken place during a quiet period between meal services when most of the galley staff were taking breaks, leaving Sarah alone with Rodriguez while she cleaned equipment. "You know, Lieutenant," Rodriguez had said, his tone carrying a casualness that didn't match the calculating expression in his eyes, "I've been wondering about your story. Most officers who end up on kitchen duty have pretty obvious reasons, but nobody seems to know exactly what you did to deserve this assignment." Sarah had continued working while formulating a response that would satisfy his curiosity, without revealing information that might compromise her mission. "Sometimes the reasons aren't as important as learning from the experience," she had replied, projecting the defensive attitude of someone who preferred not to discuss embarrassing career setbacks. Rodriguez had pressed the issue, asking specific questions about her previous assignments and training background that suggested he was conducting his own investigation into her presence aboard the ship. The conversation had lasted nearly 15 minutes, with Rodriguez probing for inconsistencies in her cover story, while Sarah deflected his questions with responses that appeared evasive, but were actually designed to reinforce her assumed identity. The encounter had ended when other crew members returned from their breaks, but Sarah understood that she was now under suspicion from the very people she had been sent to investigate. That evening's communication with Admiral Morrison had resulted in updated instructions to exercise extreme caution while continuing surveillance activities. The Admiral had also provided additional background information about Rodriguez that revealed connections to individuals suspected of espionage activities in other military installations, confirming that the Yorktown situation was indeed part of a larger intelligence operation. As Sarah entered her 7th week aboard the USS Yorktown, she understood that her mission had evolved from simple surveillance to active counterintelligence work in an environment where discovery could result in consequences far more serious than blown cover. The espionage network she had been sent to investigate was proving more sophisticated and extensive than anyone had anticipated, and her position in the galley was providing unprecedented access to intelligence that could prevent serious damage to national security. The morning sun reflected off the ocean's surface as the Yorktown continued its patrol through international waters, carrying secrets that enemy agents were systematically attempting to steal. In the ship's galley, Lieutenant Sarah Chen continued her duties scrubbing pots and serving meals, knowing that her work in the kitchen might determine the outcome of intelligence operations affecting the safety of the entire fleet. The real test of her abilities was still to come, and she could sense that the careful balance she had maintained between her cover identity and her true mission was about to be challenged in ways that would demand every skill she possessed. The 8th week aboard the USS Yorktown brought a shift in the espionage network's operations that forced Sarah to adapt her surveillance techniques while navigating increasingly dangerous waters. Rodriguez had begun conducting what appeared to be systematic background checks on crew members, paying particular attention to personnel who had access to sensitive areas of the ship. His inquiries were subtle but persistent, suggesting coordination with intelligence operatives who possessed sophisticated training in counterintelligence methods. Sarah discovered the extent of Rodriguez's investigation when she overheard him questioning Seaman Williams about her behavior patterns and work habits during off-duty hours. The conversation took place in the galley's storage area while Sarah was inventorying supplies in an adjacent compartment, positioning her perfectly to monitor their discussion without being detected. Rodriguez's questions were carefully crafted to appear like casual interest in a fellow crew member, but they revealed detailed knowledge of surveillance techniques that went far beyond his official training. "She's been keeping to herself pretty much," Williams had replied, his tone suggesting he found Rodriguez's interest unusual. "Mostly just works her shifts and stays in her quarters reading or writing letters. Not like some of the other officers who try to socialize even when they're on punishment detail." Rodriguez had pressed for more specific information about Sarah's communications habits and whether she had been observed using electronic devices during unusual hours. The questioning continued for nearly 10 minutes, with Rodriguez systematically gathering intelligence about Sarah's daily routines, sleep patterns, and interactions with other crew members. His approach demonstrated professional-level interrogation skills that were inconsistent with his official role as a navigation specialist, confirming Sarah's suspicions that he was operating undercover similar to her own situation. More concerning was Rodriguez's apparent knowledge of operational security protocols that suggested access to classified training materials or direct instruction from hostile intelligence services. His questions about communication timing and equipment usage revealed familiarity with Navy counterintelligence procedures that could only have been obtained through unauthorized channels or deliberate infiltration of security training programs. Sarah's analysis of this conversation had led to a significant breakthrough in understanding the scope of the espionage operation aboard the Yorktown. Rather than dealing with opportunistic information gathering by compromised crew members, she was facing a coordinated intelligence operation involving professionally trained operatives who had been placed aboard the ship specifically to gather strategic information about Navy operations and capabilities. The implications of this discovery had prompted an immediate encrypted communication to Admiral Morrison, who responded with authorization to expand surveillance activities and begin documenting evidence that could support criminal prosecution of the espionage network. The Admiral's message had also contained warnings about the increased personal risk Sarah faced now that she was investigating trained intelligence operatives rather than amateur spies. Her 9th week aboard the ship had brought new complications when Chief Martinez began receiving pressure from ship's administration to improve galley efficiency and reduce operational costs. The pressure came in the form of surprise inspections and detailed reviews of kitchen procedures that created additional scrutiny of all galley personnel, including Sarah's activities and performance. Lieutenant Commander Stevens from the ship's supply department had conducted a comprehensive audit of galley operations, questioning staff members about inventory procedures, waste management, and personnel productivity. Stevens's inspection had been thorough and professional, but it created opportunities for the espionage network to observe Sarah's reactions under pressure and assess whether she displayed capabilities inconsistent with her cover identity. During the inspection, Sarah had been required to explain galley procedures and demonstrate her knowledge of food safety protocols while maintaining the demeanor of someone whose primary concern was avoiding further disciplinary action. The challenge lay in showing competence sufficient to avoid suspicion from legitimate Navy personnel while not displaying expertise that might alert enemy operatives to her true capabilities. Stevens had questioned her about her previous experience with food service operations, creating a situation where Sarah needed to provide plausible explanations for skills that exceeded what would be expected from someone with her fabricated background. She had navigated this challenge by claiming to have worked in civilian restaurants during college, a cover story that explained her competence while reinforcing the narrative about her reduced circumstances. The inspection had concluded without incident, but Sarah understood that she was now operating under increased scrutiny from both legitimate Navy personnel and potential enemy agents. The complexity of maintaining her cover had grown significantly as the mission evolved beyond simple surveillance to encompass active counterintelligence work in an environment where multiple parties were conducting concurrent investigations. Her observations during the 9th week had also revealed troubling evidence that the espionage network possessed detailed knowledge of Navy operational procedures and security protocols. Jackson from the communications department had been observed discussing technical specifications for encrypted communication equipment with accuracy that suggested access to classified technical manuals or direct training from hostile intelligence services. More disturbing was the discovery that Thompson from the engineering department had been taking detailed measurements and photographs of the ship's propulsion systems during routine maintenance periods. His activities went far beyond the scope of normal engineering duties and suggested systematic intelligence gathering designed to provide enemy forces with comprehensive technical data about Navy vessel capabilities. Sarah had documented these activities through careful observation and strategic positioning during her galley duties, using techniques learned during intelligence training to gather evidence without alerting the suspects to her surveillance. The challenge lay in obtaining photographic or electronic evidence that could support prosecution while maintaining her cover as a disgraced officer focused solely on completing her punishment assignment. The 10th week had brought a development that threatened to expose her mission when Petty Officer Davis from the Supply Department approached her with an offer that seemed designed to test her loyalties and assess her potential as either an asset or a threat to the espionage operation. The conversation had taken place during the evening meal cleanup when most of the galley staff were focused on their duties and unlikely to overhear detailed discussions. "Lieutenant Chen," Davis had said, positioning himself near the industrial dishwashers where the noise would mask their conversation from potential eavesdroppers. "I've been watching how you handle yourself around here, and I think you might be interested in some opportunities that could improve your situation." Sarah had continued cleaning equipment while projecting cautious interest, understanding that her response would likely determine whether she was approached for recruitment or marked for elimination. Davis had proceeded to outline what he described as informal arrangements that existed aboard the ship, suggesting that certain crew members had developed methods for supplementing their income through activities that weren't strictly authorized by Navy regulations. His description was vague, but clearly implied involvement in unauthorized information sharing or other activities that violated security protocols. "The thing is," Davis had continued, his voice taking on a more serious tone, "opportunities like this require trust and discretion. People need to know that you understand the importance of keeping certain activities private, especially from officers who might not appreciate the practical realities of military life." Sarah had recognized this as a recruitment pitch designed to assess her willingness to participate in illegal activities, while also testing her loyalty to Navy regulations and security requirements. Her response had required careful calibration to maintain her cover, while gathering intelligence about the espionage network's recruitment methods and organizational structure. She had expressed cautious interest while projecting the desperation of someone whose career had been damaged and who might be susceptible to offers of financial gain or improved treatment aboard the ship. "I'm not sure what you're suggesting," Sarah had replied, allowing uncertainty and mild desperation to color her voice, "but my situation here isn't exactly ideal, and I might be open to arrangements that could make things easier." Davis had studied her expression carefully, clearly evaluating her sincerity and assessing the risk of bringing her into whatever operation he represented. The conversation had continued for nearly 20 minutes, with Davis providing additional details about the supposed opportunities, while Sarah gathered intelligence about the network's methods and membership. Davis had mentioned other crew members who were allegedly involved in these arrangements, providing confirmation of Sarah's suspicions about the scope of the espionage operation. Most significantly, Davis had referenced connections to personnel on other Navy vessels, suggesting that the espionage network extended beyond the Yorktown to encompass a fleet-wide intelligence operation. This revelation had confirmed Admiral Morrison's concerns about systematic compromise of Navy security and provided evidence that justified expanded counterintelligence operations throughout the fleet. The conversation had concluded with Davis requesting time to consider Sarah's suitability for involvement in their activities, effectively placing her under evaluation by the espionage network while she continued her own investigation of their operations. This development had created a complex situation where Sarah needed to maintain her cover while potentially becoming an active participant in the criminal activities she had been sent to investigate. Her 11th week aboard the Yorktown had brought new challenges when the ship received orders for an extended deployment that would take them into waters where communication with Admiral Morrison would become significantly more difficult. The deployment orders had been classified at levels that prevented most crew members from understanding their ultimate destination, but Sarah's intelligence training allowed her to interpret the limited information available and recognize the strategic importance of their mission. The classified nature of the deployment had also created new opportunities for the espionage network to gather intelligence about Navy strategic operations while operating under conditions where their activities would be more difficult to detect and investigate. Sarah understood that the upcoming deployment would represent the culmination of the network's intelligence-gathering efforts and her best opportunity to document their activities with evidence sufficient for prosecution. Preparation for the deployment had required extensive coordination between different departments aboard the ship, creating numerous opportunities for Sarah to observe interactions between suspected espionage network members and document their communication patterns. Rodriguez and Jackson had been observed conducting several private meetings during off-duty hours, while Thompson and Davis had coordinated activities that appeared designed to gather intelligence about the ship's operational capabilities and limitations. More concerning was the appearance of new personnel aboard the ship who claimed to be temporary assignments for the deployment, but whose backgrounds and qualifications seemed inconsistent with their stated roles. Chief Warrant Officer Morgan from an unspecified intelligence unit had joined the crew with credentials that appeared legitimate but behavior patterns that suggested familiarity with covert operations and surveillance techniques. Sarah's analysis of Morgan's activities had revealed sophisticated knowledge of counterintelligence procedures and apparent coordination with the existing espionage network members. Morgan's presence aboard the ship suggested that the hostile intelligence operation had reached a level of sophistication that included the placement of senior personnel in positions where they could influence operational planning and security protocols. The 12th week had brought the beginning of their classified deployment, with the Yorktown departing port under conditions that prevented most crew members from communicating with shore-based contacts or family members. The communication restrictions created perfect cover for Sarah's intelligence activities, while also providing the espionage network with opportunities to operate without fear of external detection or interference. During the first days of deployment, Sarah had observed a significant increase in clandestine activities among the suspected network members. Rodriguez and Jackson had been conducting regular meetings in secluded areas of the ship, while Thompson had been systematically photographing and documenting technical systems with equipment that appeared far more sophisticated than anything required for routine maintenance work. Most disturbing was the discovery that Davis had been accessing areas of the ship that were beyond his security clearance level, using techniques that suggested professional training in bypassing electronic security systems. His activities indicated that the espionage network possessed capabilities for compromising even highly secured areas of Navy vessels, representing a threat to operational security that extended far beyond simple information gathering. Sarah's documentation of these activities had been complicated by the communication restrictions imposed during their deployment, limiting her ability to coordinate with Admiral Morrison while requiring her to make independent decisions about how to proceed with her investigation. The isolation had also increased the personal risk she faced if her cover was discovered, as emergency extraction would be impossible while the ship was operating under deployment conditions. Her observations during the deployment had revealed that the espionage network was preparing for a major intelligence operation that would likely coincide with their arrival at their classified destination. The network members had been coordinating activities with increasing frequency and sophistication, suggesting that their ultimate objective was connected to the strategic importance of their current mission. The 13th week had brought a critical development when Sarah discovered that the espionage network had obtained detailed intelligence about their destination and operational objectives, information that should have been restricted to senior officers and specific personnel with strategic security clearances. The discovery had come during routine galley operations, when she overheard Rodriguez discussing tactical details about their mission with accuracy that could only have come from accessing classified operational planning documents. Rodriguez's knowledge included specific information about coastal geography, potential threat assessments, and operational timelines that demonstrated comprehensive understanding of Navy strategic planning for their deployment. His discussion with Jackson revealed that they possessed intelligence about friendly force dispositions and logistical support arrangements that could be used by hostile forces to compromise the entire operation. More alarming was the revelation that the espionage network had been transmitting intelligence to external contacts using sophisticated communication equipment that had somehow been brought aboard the ship without detection by security screening procedures. Sarah had discovered evidence of these transmissions during late-night surveillance activities, when she observed unusual electromagnetic signatures emanating from areas of the ship where the network members had been conducting their clandestine meetings. The sophistication of their communication capabilities suggested coordination with professional intelligence services and access to equipment that exceeded anything available through normal military channels. The network's ability to maintain contact with external handlers while operating aboard a deployed Navy vessel represented a level of operational security that threatened not just their current mission, but potentially every Navy operation that involved personnel who might be compromised by similar espionage activities. Sarah's 14th week aboard the Yorktown had culminated in a discovery that changed everything she understood about the scope and objectives of the espionage operation she had been investigating. While conducting routine cleaning in an area near the ship's communication center, she had discovered sophisticated surveillance equipment that had been installed in locations where it could monitor and record sensitive communications between the ship and Fleet Command. The equipment was expertly concealed and integrated into existing systems in ways that suggested installation by personnel with detailed technical knowledge of Navy communication protocols and electronic warfare capabilities. The sophistication of the installation indicated that the espionage network included individuals with access to classified technical specifications and professional training in electronic surveillance methods. More disturbing was the discovery that the surveillance equipment had been operational for an extended period, potentially compromising months of sensitive communications about Navy operations throughout their deployment area. The intelligence that had been gathered through this surveillance could have provided hostile forces with comprehensive understanding of Navy strategic planning, operational capabilities, and tactical procedures. Sarah's analysis of the surveillance installation had revealed that it was designed not just to intercept communications but to inject false information into Navy communication networks, creating the potential for the espionage network to manipulate operational planning and tactical decisions in ways that could compromise mission success and endanger personnel throughout the fleet. The realization that she was dealing with an operation capable of actively manipulating Navy communications, rather than simply gathering intelligence, had prompted Sarah to recognize that her mission had evolved beyond counterintelligence to encompass active defense of critical military operations. The espionage network represented a threat to national security that demanded immediate action, even if such action might compromise her cover and expose her to personal danger. As the Yorktown continued its classified deployment through increasingly dangerous waters, Sarah understood that the careful balance she had maintained between surveillance and security was about to collapse. The espionage network was preparing for operations that could compromise not just their current mission but potentially every Navy operation in their deployment area. Her role as an undercover intelligence officer was about to transform into something far more dangerous, as she prepared to take direct action against professionally trained enemy operatives who possessed capabilities she was only beginning to understand. The evidence she had gathered during 14 weeks of careful surveillance had revealed an espionage operation of unprecedented scope and sophistication, involving multiple Navy vessels and potentially extending to shore-based installations throughout the fleet. Her next decision would determine whether this network could be neutralized before it achieved objectives that could compromise American naval operations for years to come. In the cramped galley of the USS Yorktown, Lieutenant Sarah Chen continued her duties serving meals and cleaning equipment, knowing that her work in the kitchen had uncovered a threat that could change the course of naval warfare. The real test of her abilities was approaching rapidly, and she could sense that everything she had learned during months of careful investigation was about to be put to the ultimate test. The 15th week at sea brought an emergency that would shatter every assumption the crew held about Lieutenant Sarah Chen and transform her from kitchen worker to the ship's most valuable asset. At 0347 hours, the USS Yorktown's proximity alarm screamed through the corridors as radar detected 3 unidentified vessels approaching at high speed through the pre-dawn darkness. Captain Williams' voice echoed throughout the ship, ordering all hands to battle stations. But what happened next would reveal that their carefully planned deployment had been compromised from the moment they left port. Sarah was preparing breakfast in the galley when the first explosion rocked the ship, sending her sprawling across the steel deck as pots and pans crashed around her. The lights flickered and emergency lighting bathed everything in an eerie red glow as the ship's defensive systems engaged automatically. Through the galley's porthole, she could see muzzle flashes from hostile vessels that had somehow penetrated their security perimeter, without triggering early warning systems. Chief Martinez burst into the galley shouting orders for the kitchen staff to secure all equipment and report to emergency stations, but Sarah was already moving with purpose that had nothing to do with galley operations. While other crew members scrambled to follow emergency protocols, She was accessing a concealed compartment in her work locker that contained equipment far more sophisticated than anything a disgraced officer should possess. The hostile vessels had achieved tactical surprise through intelligence that could only have come from the espionage network Sarah had been investigating for months. Rodriguez, Jackson, Thompson, Davis, and Morgan had provided enemy forces with detailed information about the Yorktown's defensive capabilities, patrol routes, and operational procedures, enabling them to plan an attack that exploited every weakness in the ship's security posture. But they had made one critical miscalculation in their intelligence assessment. They believed Sarah Chen was exactly what she appeared to be, a failed officer assigned to kitchen duty as punishment for career-ending mistakes. They had no idea that Admiral Morrison had placed aboard their target vessel an intelligence operative whose capabilities exceeded those of most Navy Special Operations personnel. Sarah emerged from her locker carrying what appeared to be standard communication equipment, but was actually a sophisticated electronic warfare system capable of intercepting, analyzing, and jamming hostile communications across multiple frequency ranges. Her training in advanced electronic surveillance techniques, carefully hidden during months of kitchen duty, was about to prove decisive in defending the ship against an attack that had been planned using stolen intelligence. The second explosion knocked out primary communications, leaving the Yorktown unable to coordinate with Fleet Command or call for reinforcement. Emergency power kicked in as water began flooding compartments in the lower decks, and Sarah realized that the hostile forces were executing a plan designed to disable rather than sink the ship, suggesting their objective was capture rather than destruction. Moving through corridors filled with smoke and emergency lighting, Sarah made her way to the ship's communication center, where she found Lieutenant Commander Stevens attempting to restore contact with Fleet Command using backup systems that had been damaged by the initial attack. Stevens looked up in surprise as Sarah entered the secure area carrying equipment that clearly exceeded her authorized access level. "Lieutenant Chen, you're supposed to be at emergency stations in the galley," Stevens said, confusion evident in his voice as he noticed the sophisticated electronics Sarah was deploying. "What are you doing here? And where did you get that equipment?" Sarah's response would reveal the truth about her identity and mission for the first time since boarding the Yorktown. "Commander, my name is Lieutenant Sarah Chen, Naval Intelligence, operating under direct orders from Admiral Morrison," she said, while connecting her equipment to the ship's communication systems with efficiency that demonstrated extensive technical training. "I've been aboard this ship for 4 months investigating espionage activities that have compromised our operational security. The attack we're experiencing was planned using intelligence gathered by hostile operatives among our crew." Stevens stared at her in amazement as Sarah's equipment immediately began intercepting and analyzing communications between the attacking vessels, revealing coordination patterns and tactical planning that confirmed their attack had been based on detailed knowledge of the Yorktown's capabilities and procedures. The electronic signatures she was detecting matched profiles of advanced foreign military technology that should not have been available to non-state actors. "The hostiles are using encrypted communication protocols that indicate state-level intelligence support," Sarah reported, while simultaneously jamming their coordination frequencies and tracking their positions using passive electronic surveillance. "Their attack plan demonstrates comprehensive knowledge of our defensive systems, crew positions, and operational procedures that could only have been obtained through systematic espionage." Her analysis revealed that the attacking forces were executing a sophisticated capture operation designed to board the Yorktown and extract specific personnel and equipment while minimizing damage to valuable intelligence assets. The precision of their attack indicated that they possessed detailed blueprints of the ship's layout and comprehensive understanding of Navy emergency procedures and defensive protocols. More disturbing was her discovery that the attacking vessels were maintaining communication with someone aboard the Yorktown, using frequencies and encryption methods that matched equipment she had observed during her surveillance of the espionage network. Rodriguez, Jackson, and their colleagues were actively coordinating with the hostile forces, providing real-time intelligence about the ship's defensive responses and damage assessment. "Commander, we have enemy operatives aboard this ship who are feeding tactical information to the attacking forces," Sarah announced, while deploying countermeasures designed to disrupt their communications and identify their locations. "I need immediate access to security systems so I can locate and neutralize the internal threat while defending against the external attack." Stevens, still processing the revelation that the officer he had known as kitchen staff was actually an intelligence operative, quickly provided access codes for security systems throughout the ship. Sarah's fingers flew across multiple keyboards as she simultaneously tracked hostile communications, coordinated defensive responses, and began identifying the exact locations of enemy operatives among the crew. Her electronic warfare systems detected transmission sources in the engineering department, supply areas, and navigation center, confirming that the espionage network had positioned operatives in critical areas where they could provide comprehensive intelligence about the ship's capabilities and vulnerabilities. The sophistication of their coordination indicated professional military training and access to equipment that exceeded standard Navy communications capabilities. Within minutes, Sarah had isolated the frequencies being used by the internal operatives and begun injecting false information into their communications with the attacking forces. Her countermeasures created confusion among the hostile vessels as they received contradictory intelligence about the Yorktown's damage status, defensive capabilities, and crew positions. The third explosion, significantly smaller than the previous attacks, indicated that the hostile forces were responding to the false information Sarah was providing through their compromised communication channels. Instead of concentrating their fire on the ship's actual vulnerabilities, they were attacking areas that she had identified as critical but were actually heavily defended or contained dummy equipment. "Stevens, I need you to coordinate with damage control teams while I handle the electronic warfare aspects of this engagement," Sarah instructed, while tracking the attacking vessels through electronic surveillance methods that revealed their exact positions, capabilities, and tactical intentions. The enemy operatives aboard this ship are Rodriguez from navigation, Jackson from communications, Thompson from engineering, Davis from supply, and Morgan from intelligence. Stevens immediately contacted security teams to begin locating and detaining the suspected operatives, but Sarah's electronic surveillance revealed that they had already begun implementing escape procedures designed to extract them from the ship during the confusion of the attack. Thompson was moving toward emergency evacuation systems while Davis was attempting to destroy evidence in the supply areas. Sarah's countermeasures included activating automated security systems that prevented unauthorized access to critical areas, while simultaneously tracking the movements of all suspected operatives through electronic monitoring of their communications and location transponders. Her capabilities in electronic surveillance and countermeasures were proving decisive in both defending against the external attack and neutralizing the internal threat. The fourth wave of attacks came from a different direction, as the hostile forces attempted to adapt to the false intelligence Sarah was feeding them through the compromised communication channels. However, her electronic warfare systems had anticipated this tactical shift and were already prepared, with countermeasures that further confused the enemy coordination while providing accurate intelligence to the Yorktown's defensive systems. Her analysis revealed that the attacking vessels were operating under significant disadvantages due to the false intelligence they were receiving about the ship's actual condition and defensive capabilities. The precision attack they had planned based on stolen intelligence was deteriorating into a confused engagement where they were expending resources against targets that either didn't exist or were heavily defended. More importantly, Sarah's electronic surveillance had identified the location and capabilities of the attacking vessels with accuracy that enabled the Yorktown's defensive systems to engage them effectively, despite the damage sustained during the initial surprise attack. Her intelligence gathering was providing tactical advantages that were rapidly shifting the balance of the engagement in favor of the defending vessel. "Commander, I'm detecting indications that the attacking forces are preparing to withdraw," Sarah reported while monitoring their communications and movement patterns. "The false intelligence I've been providing has disrupted their coordination sufficiently that they're no longer confident in their ability to complete their capture mission." However, her surveillance also revealed that the enemy operatives aboard the ship were implementing contingency plans designed to destroy evidence of their activities while creating additional damage that would facilitate future attacks. Rodriguez had accessed navigation systems with the apparent intent of compromising course data, while Jackson was attempting to plant explosive devices in the communication center. Sarah's response demonstrated capabilities that went far beyond electronic warfare and intelligence analysis. Moving through the ship with tactical precision that revealed extensive combat training, she began systematically locating and neutralizing the enemy operatives using techniques that combined electronic surveillance with direct action methods. Her first encounter was with Thompson in the engineering section, where he was attempting to sabotage propulsion systems while the ship was engaged with hostile forces. Sarah's approach was silent and precise, using methods learned during specialized training that enabled her to incapacitate him before he could complete his sabotage or alert other operatives to her presence. Thompson's equipment included sophisticated demolition devices and communication gear that confirmed the professional level of the espionage operation. His credentials, when examined closely, revealed falsified elements that should have been detected during normal security screening but had been crafted with expertise that indicated state-level support for the infiltration operation. Moving to the supply areas where Davis was destroying evidence, Sarah encountered resistance that tested her combat training against an opponent who possessed similar capabilities. Davis had been armed with weapons that exceeded standard Navy issue and had received training in close combat techniques that indicated special operations background. The engagement lasted several minutes and ranged through multiple compartments as Davis attempted to complete his evidence destruction while fighting off Sarah's attempts to capture him. His resistance demonstrated that the espionage network included operatives with professional military training who were prepared to use deadly force to protect their mission and escape capture. Sarah's victory in this engagement came through superior tactical planning and utilization of her detailed knowledge of the ship's layout, advantages that enabled her to anticipate Davis's movements and position herself for decisive action. Her interrogation techniques, applied immediately after his capture, revealed critical information about the network's communication methods and escape procedures. Rodriguez proved more elusive, having access to the navigation center where he could monitor security communications and coordinate his movements to avoid detection. Sarah's electronic surveillance capabilities enabled her to track his position through the ship's internal monitoring systems while simultaneously jamming his communications with external forces. Their confrontation in the navigation center revealed that Rodriguez possessed detailed knowledge of Navy operational procedures and access to classified information that should have been restricted to personnel with much higher security clearances. His equipment included devices capable of accessing and modifying navigation data in ways that could compromise future operations throughout the fleet. The most dangerous encounter came with Morgan, who had been positioned in the intelligence center where he could access comprehensive information about Navy operations while coordinating with the espionage network. Morgan's resistance indicated professional training that matched Sarah's own capabilities, creating a tactical situation that required every skill she possessed. Their engagement revealed that Morgan was not simply a placed operative, but a trained intelligence officer with access to resources and capabilities that indicated coordination with hostile intelligence services at the highest levels. His presence aboard the Yorktown represented a level of infiltration that threatened not just their current mission, but potentially every Navy operation in their deployment area. Sarah's success in neutralizing Morgan came through utilization of intelligence about his background and training that she had gathered during months of careful surveillance. Her knowledge of his capabilities and limitations enabled her to plan tactical approaches that exploited weaknesses in his operational procedures while maximizing her own advantages. The capture of Jackson in the communications center completed Sarah's neutralization of the espionage network, but revealed the full scope of the intelligence that had been compromised during their months of operation aboard the ship. Jackson's equipment included comprehensive records of intercepted communications, tactical assessments, and operational plans that demonstrated systematic compromise of Navy security extending far beyond the Yorktown. With the internal threat neutralized, Sarah returned to the communication center where her electronic warfare systems had successfully confused the attacking forces to the point where they were withdrawing from the engagement. Her countermeasures had transformed a carefully planned capture operation into a failed attack that exposed the capabilities and methods of a sophisticated espionage network. Commander Stevens, the hostile vessels are withdrawing and I have neutralized all enemy operatives aboard the ship, Sarah reported, while beginning comprehensive analysis of the intelligence materials she had captured. However, the scope of the espionage operation we've uncovered indicates that similar threats may exist throughout the fleet. Her analysis of the captured equipment and documents revealed communication with operatives aboard at least 6 other Navy vessels, suggesting that the Yorktown investigation had exposed only one component of a comprehensive intelligence operation designed to compromise Navy operations throughout their deployment area and potentially in home ports as well. The sophistication of the operation indicated coordination with professional intelligence services and access to resources that exceeded anything available to non-state actors. The espionage network had been systematically gathering intelligence about Navy capabilities, operational procedures, and strategic planning with efficiency that threatened national security at the highest levels. As the USS Yorktown secured from battle stations and began damage assessment procedures, Sarah transmitted comprehensive intelligence reports to Admiral Morrison, using secure communication methods that had been protected from the espionage network throughout her investigation. Her reports detailed not only the operatives she had neutralized aboard the Yorktown, but the extensive intelligence they had gathered about fleet operations and the methods they had used to coordinate with hostile forces. The revelation of Sarah's true identity and capabilities had transformed the crew's perception of the officer they had known as kitchen staff assigned to punishment duty. Captain Williams personally commended her actions in defending the ship, while Commander Stevens publicly acknowledged that her intelligence work had prevented what could have been a catastrophic compromise of Navy operations. But Sarah understood that her mission aboard the Yorktown had evolved beyond investigating espionage to encompass protecting the entire fleet from similar threats. The intelligence she had gathered revealed that the network's operations extended throughout Navy installations and deployment areas, requiring comprehensive counterintelligence efforts that would demand every skill she possessed. 3 weeks after the attack on the USS Yorktown, Sarah stood in Admiral Morrison's office at Naval Intelligence Headquarters, wearing her dress uniform with new ribbons that reflected commendations she could never publicly discuss. The debriefing had taken 18 hours across multiple classified sessions, but the full scope of what she had uncovered was only beginning to emerge as intelligence analysts processed the massive amount of data recovered from the espionage network. Lieutenant Chen, Admiral Morrison said, reviewing files that contained operational details classified at levels that restricted access to fewer than 50 people in the entire Navy. Your investigation has revealed the most sophisticated foreign intelligence operation we've encountered in decades. The network you neutralized aboard the Yorktown was coordinating with similar cells on 17 other vessels and 12 shore installations. The captured equipment and documents had provided investigators with unprecedented insight into foreign intelligence capabilities and methods that had been systematically compromising Navy operations for over 2 years. Communication logs revealed that the espionage network had been feeding detailed tactical information to hostile forces while simultaneously gathering strategic intelligence about Navy deployment patterns, technological capabilities, and operational procedures. More disturbing was the discovery that the network had been planning coordinated attacks against multiple Navy vessels using intelligence gathered through their systematic infiltration of fleet operations. Sarah's intervention aboard the Yorktown had prevented not just the capture of a single ship, but a comprehensive assault that could have crippled Navy operations throughout their deployment area. The President has been briefed on your actions, Admiral Morrison continued. And while the details must remain classified, I can tell you that your work has been recognized at the highest levels of government. The intelligence you gathered has enabled us to identify and neutralize similar threats throughout the fleet, potentially saving hundreds of lives and preventing catastrophic compromise of national security. Sarah's analysis during the weeks following the attack had revealed that the espionage network possessed capabilities that exceeded anything previously encountered in naval intelligence operations. Their communication systems included quantum encryption methods that should not have been available to non-state actors, while their surveillance equipment demonstrated technological sophistication that indicated support from advanced foreign intelligence services. The operational procedures documented in their captured files revealed systematic approaches to infiltrating Navy installations and vessels that suggested extensive study of American military culture, training methods, and security protocols. The network had developed recruitment and infiltration techniques specifically designed to exploit weaknesses in Navy personnel screening and security procedures. We're implementing comprehensive changes to fleet security protocols based on your recommendations, Admiral Morrison explained while reviewing documents that outline systematic reforms to Navy counterintelligence procedures. Every vessel and installation is being audited using methods you developed during your investigation, and we're establishing new screening procedures that should prevent similar infiltration attempts. The reforms included enhanced background investigation procedures, improved electronic surveillance capabilities, and new training programs designed to help Navy personnel identify potential security threats among their colleagues. Sarah's experience aboard the Yorktown had provided insights into espionage methods that were being incorporated into advanced counterintelligence training throughout the fleet. More significantly, her success in maintaining deep cover while conducting sophisticated intelligence operations had demonstrated the effectiveness of placement operations that could provide unprecedented access to information about foreign intelligence activities. Admiral Morrison was proposing an expansion of such operations that would position trained intelligence officers throughout the fleet in roles that would enable them to detect and investigate security threats before they could compromise critical operations. I'm offering you command of a new counterintelligence unit that would be responsible for identifying and neutralizing foreign intelligence operations throughout Navy installations worldwide, Admiral Morrison said, sliding a classified folder across her desk. The unit would report directly to me and would have authority to conduct operations at any level necessary to protect fleet security. The proposed unit would include 12 intelligence officers trained in deep cover operations similar to Sarah's experience aboard the Yorktown, but with enhanced capabilities and resources that would enable them to investigate threats at multiple installations simultaneously. Each officer would be equipped with advanced surveillance technology and would have access to classified databases that would enable real-time analysis of potential security threats. Sarah opened the folder and reviewed operational plans that outlined systematic approaches to protecting Navy installations from the sophisticated espionage methods that had been revealed through her investigation. The scope of the proposed operations exceeded anything she had imagined when she first accepted assignment to kitchen duty aboard the Yorktown, but the threat assessment data confirmed that such comprehensive measures were necessary to defend against foreign intelligence capabilities that continued to evolve. The officers selected for this unit would undergo training that builds on your experience while preparing them for operations in environments where detection could result in consequences far more severe than blown cover, Admiral Morrison explained. We're dealing with intelligence services that have demonstrated willingness to use deadly force to protect their operations, and our response must be prepared for similar levels of risk. The training program outlined in the operational plans included advanced combat techniques, sophisticated electronic warfare methods, and psychological preparation for extended deep cover operations. Each officer would be trained to operate independently for months, while maintaining cover identities that would enable them to access sensitive information about potential security threats. Sarah's review of the proposed unit's capabilities revealed that her experience aboard the Yorktown had provided insights that were revolutionizing Navy approaches to counterintelligence operations. The combination of deep cover placement with advanced surveillance technology and real-time intelligence analysis created possibilities for detecting and neutralizing espionage operations that had previously been impossible to identify until after significant damage had been done. "Ma'am, I accept the assignment," Sarah said, understanding that her decision would determine not just her own career, but potentially the security of Navy operations for years to come. "When do we begin training the first team?" Admiral Morrison smiled with satisfaction, clearly having anticipated Sarah's acceptance of the challenging assignment. 6 months later, Sarah stood before a group of 8 naval officers in a classified training facility that appeared on no official maps or organizational charts. The officers, ranging in rank from lieutenant to lieutenant commander, had been selected based on psychological profiles, technical capabilities, and demonstrated ability to operate under extreme pressure while maintaining operational security. "You're here because conventional counterintelligence methods have proven insufficient against the sophisticated threats we're facing," Sarah began, her voice carrying authority earned through operations that had prevented catastrophic compromise of national security. "The training you'll receive will prepare you for assignments where failure means more than career consequences. Lives depend on your ability to detect and neutralize threats that others cannot see." The training facility included mock ship compartments, simulated shore installations, and advanced technology laboratories, where the officers would learn techniques for conducting surveillance and intelligence operations while maintaining cover identities that would enable access to potential security threats. Each simulation was designed to replicate the psychological and operational challenges they would face during actual assignments. Lieutenant Martinez, formerly a communications specialist, was learning techniques for detecting electronic surveillance while maintaining cover as maintenance personnel. Her technical background provided advantages in identifying sophisticated monitoring equipment, but she was also developing skills in social engineering that would enable her to gather intelligence about personnel who might be involved in espionage activities. Commander Thompson, a former intelligence analyst, was training for assignments that would require him to operate as supply personnel while investigating potential compromise of logistical operations. His analytical skills were being combined with practical experience in warehouse operations and inventory management that would enable him to identify unusual patterns in equipment and supply requests. The most challenging aspects of the training involved psychological preparation for extended isolation while maintaining cover identities that required them to appear incompetent or troubled. Each officer was learning techniques for projecting vulnerability while actually conducting sophisticated intelligence operations that required constant vigilance and professional expertise. Remember that your cover identity is your primary defense, Sarah instructed during scenarios that tested their ability to maintain operational security while under pressure from suspicious colleagues. The moment anyone suspects you're more capable than you appear, your mission becomes compromised and your personal safety is threatened. The training scenarios included situations based on Sarah's experience aboard the Yorktown, but with variations that tested the officer's ability to adapt her methods to different environments and threats. Each scenario was designed to develop skills that would enable them to recognize and respond to espionage activities while avoiding detection by increasingly sophisticated foreign intelligence operations. Lieutenant Davis was demonstrating exceptional capability in electronic warfare techniques that would enable her to detect and counter sophisticated surveillance equipment while appearing to be focused on routine janitorial duties. Her cover identity as cleaning personnel would provide access to all areas of a facility while creating opportunities to observe unusual activities and equipment installations. The success of the training program was measured not just by the officers' technical capabilities, but by their ability to maintain psychological equilibrium during extended periods of isolation and deception. Each officer was required to undergo psychological evaluation that confirmed their ability to operate under conditions that would challenge their sense of identity and professional competence. 1 year after the attack on the USS Yorktown, intelligence reports began documenting the success of the new counterintelligence unit in identifying and neutralizing espionage operations throughout Navy installations. Officers trained in Sarah's methods had identified foreign intelligence activities at installations in 3 different geographic regions, preventing compromise of operations that included strategic deployment planning and advanced technology development. The unit's success had exceeded expectations, with each officer demonstrating ability to maintain deep cover for extended periods while gathering intelligence that enabled comprehensive understanding of foreign espionage capabilities and methods. Their reports provided insights into recruitment techniques, communication methods, and operational procedures that were enabling systematic improvements to Navy security protocols. More importantly, the existence of the unit was beginning to create uncertainty among foreign intelligence services about their ability to operate undetected within Navy installations. Intelligence reports indicated that several known espionage operations had been terminated or relocated due to concerns about detection by American counterintelligence capabilities that exceeded their previous assessments. Sarah's role as unit commander required her to coordinate operations across multiple installations, while maintaining oversight of officers conducting dangerous assignments in environments where discovery could result in deadly consequences. Her experience aboard the Yorktown provided insights that enabled her to anticipate challenges and provide guidance that enhanced both operational effectiveness and personnel safety. The most significant success had come from Lieutenant Rodriguez, operating under cover as food service personnel, aboard a vessel where foreign operatives had been systematically gathering intelligence about advanced navigation systems. Rodriguez's investigation had revealed an espionage network that included personnel with access to classified technical specifications, leading to arrests that prevented theft of technology worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Commander Jackson had identified a procurement fraud scheme that was actually serving as cover for foreign intelligence gathering about Navy logistical capabilities. His work had exposed corruption that extended to civilian contractors and military personnel, resulting in prosecutions that disrupted an operation designed to gather comprehensive intelligence about Navy supply chain vulnerabilities. The cumulative impact of the unit's operations was transforming Navy approaches to security and counterintelligence throughout the fleet. Traditional reactive methods were being replaced by proactive operations that identified threats before they could compromise critical operations, while advanced surveillance capabilities were providing unprecedented insight into foreign intelligence activities. 2 years after her assignment to kitchen duty aboard the USS Yorktown, Sarah received notification that she had been promoted to commander and assigned to establish a Joint Service Counterintelligence Command that would coordinate similar operations throughout all branches of the military. The success of her Navy unit had attracted attention from Army, Air Force, and Marine Corps leadership, who recognized the need for comparable capabilities to address espionage threats affecting their operations. The Joint Command would coordinate counterintelligence operations across all military installations worldwide, utilizing methods developed through Sarah's experience and refined through the success of her Navy unit. The scope of the operations would include not just identification of foreign intelligence activities, but comprehensive analysis of their capabilities and coordination with intelligence agencies to develop effective countermeasures. On a quiet evening in her office overlooking the Potomac River, Sarah reviewed reports from officers conducting operations throughout the world. Each report represented lives protected and national security preserved through work that could never be publicly acknowledged or celebrated. The officers under her command were operating in environments where they appeared to be failures, while actually conducting some of the most important work in the military. Lieutenant Kim was investigating potential espionage at an overseas installation where she appeared to be struggling with routine administrative duties while actually tracking sophisticated foreign intelligence operations. Commander Williams was operating as maintenance personnel at a technology development facility where his apparent incompetence concealed surveillance activities that were providing critical intelligence about attempts to steal classified research. The transformation from kitchen worker to commander of Joint Service Counterintelligence Operations represented a journey that had changed not just Sarah's career but potentially the security of American military operations for generations to come. Her willingness to endure months of humiliation and apparent failure had prevented catastrophic compromise of national security while establishing methods that were protecting countless lives in operations. The lessons learned aboard the USS Yorktown continued to influence every aspect of her command responsibilities. The importance of maintaining cover at all costs, the need for comprehensive understanding of threats before taking action, and the recognition that apparent weakness could be transformed into strategic advantage were principles that guided every operation conducted by officers under her command. As Sarah prepared for sleep in quarters that reflected her actual rank and responsibilities, she thought about the officers currently serving in galleys, maintenance shops, and supply rooms throughout the military, where they appeared to be struggling with routine duties while actually conducting sophisticated intelligence operations that protected national security. Their sacrifices and dedication ensured that the security threats revealed through her investigation aboard the Yorktown would never again achieve the level of success that had once threatened the entire fleet. The final report of the evening had come from Admiral Morrison, confirming that foreign intelligence services were significantly reducing their attempts to infiltrate Navy installations due to uncertainty about American counterintelligence capabilities. The existence of Sarah's unit, while classified, was creating strategic uncertainty that enhanced security throughout the fleet while protecting operations that remained classified at the highest levels. In facilities throughout the world, men and women trained in Sarah's methods continued their work, appearing to struggle with mundane duties while actually conducting operations that protected the foundation of American military power. Their success ensured that future generations would inherit security capabilities that had been purchased through sacrifice, dedication, and willingness to appear weak while exercising strength that their enemies could not detect or understand. The story that had begun with a simple assignment to kitchen duty had evolved into a legacy that would protect American military operations for decades to come, proving that sometimes the greatest victories are achieved by those who are willing to be underestimated until the moment when their true capabilities are revealed. Sarah Chi had transformed from a woman scrubbing pots to a guardian of national security, carrying forward a mission that would never end as long as threats existed against the freedoms she had sworn to protect. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.